the first day of silence doesn't hit him like a train wreck. In fact, it feels more like a subtle shift in weather. He notices the stillness but brushes it off. He tells himself, you're probably just caught up in something. Work, friends, a mood, nothing serious. After all, you've always been there. You've always replied. You've always cared, sometimes more than you should have. So when your name doesn't pop up on his phone that day, his brain doesn't immediately go into crisis mode. It goes into assumption mode. He may casually check his phone a little more than usual. He may hover on your profile, not because he misses you deeply yet, but because he's starting to notice the absence. The pattern is disrupted, and even men who claim to love freedom and space are unsettled when the rhythm shifts in a way they didn't control. That's the irony. When you were consistently available, it was taken for granted. Now that you've gone quiet, he starts to feel off balance, not panicked, but curious. Still, he doesn't move, not on day one. The ego is still in charge. It whispers that you're just taking a beat, that you'll break the silence soon. Maybe you're trying to make a point. Maybe you're feeling emotional. Maybe you just need attention. He convinces himself it's a short pause, not a turning point. He doesn't yet realize that this moment marks the start of something he's not prepared for, the unraveling of the control he thought he had. What he doesn't know is that this silence didn't begin with your first unanswered message. It began weeks or months ago, when you first felt dismissed, overlooked, misunderstood, or emotionally abandoned. This silence is the echo of every time you felt alone in the relationship while physically together. This isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. But on day one, he hasn't connected those dots. He's still thinking it's about you, that you're emotional, that you're sensitive, that you'll come back. And that's where your power begins to grow. Because for the first time in a long time, you're not moving toward him. You're not explaining. You're not apologizing for your needs. You're not filling the space between you with your words, your effort, your energy. You're doing something that terrifies people who are used to being chased. You've stopped chasing. You've stopped trying to be understood by someone who didn't listen when you were speaking clearly. And whether he realizes it today or a week from now or not at all, that shift begins to create a silence that says more than any confrontation ever could. Day one is about confusion for him, but clarity for you. And even though you might feel anxious, tempted to reach out, tempted to just check in, you hold the line, because the woman who's finally chosen herself doesn't owe an explanation to the man who took her emotional availability for granted. You let him sit in that small discomfort of wondering where you went. And it's that discomfort, that question, that will start to grow into something deeper. But not yet, not today. Today, he's still pretending you're just busy. But inside, a quiet realization has begun to form. It's small, but it's there. Why haven't I heard from her? That question, innocent as it seems, is the beginning of a shift in his mind and the return of your emotional power. By day 3, the silence is no longer a background hum. It's noticeable. And for a man who's grown accustomed to your consistent presence, your good mornings, your check-ins, your thoughtful reminders, and your emotional warmth, that quiet starts to stretch. But still, the ego doesn't panic. Instead, it postures. He begins to tell himself stories. She's just being dramatic. She's probably testing me. She'll text me by tonight. This isn't deep reflection, it's defense. His ego isn't interested in humility. It's interested in maintaining a sense of control. So rather than asking what he did or failed to do that led to the silence, he assumes it's a game. And that assumption tells you everything about how entitled he may have felt to your emotional labor. See, by day 3, the absence begins to feel real, not just like a delay or a fluke. But instead of immediately responding with curiosity or self-awareness, the ego leans in with denial, arrogance, and misplaced confidence. She's always the one who texts first. She's just holding out. I'll wait her out. The irony is that waiting game he thinks he's in, you're not playing it because you're no longer waiting, hoping, or reaching out. You're living, you're healing, you're moving inward, but he hasn't called on yet. The ego loves the illusion of control. It loves to believe that it still has access to you even in your absence. So on day 3, while he's scrolling through social media, checking to see if you're online or casually bringing you up in conversation with his friends, he's still holding tight to the belief that at any moment you'll cave, that you'll miss him more than you respect yourself, that your habit of showing up will override your need to feel seen. And it's the ego talking, and it's loud. He may start to do small things to prompt your reaction, a subtle like on your post, a vague story about how he's out having a good time, maybe even a random meme or emoji he's never sent before. It's all bait. He's trying to stir the water just to see if you're still swimming in it. He wants confirmation that you're still watching, still caring, still emotionally tied, even if he has no intention of stepping up. Why? Because that confirmation feeds the ego. It reassures him that even in silence, he hasn't really lost anything. And that illusion is comforting. But what unsettles him quietly, deeply, is your lack of response. You don't bite, you don't react, you don't reach. And in that space, his confidence wavers. Because now it's not just about whether you're upset, it's about whether you're over it. And that is terrifying to someone who was used to being the center of your emotional world. By day 3, he starts to wonder if you're thinking about him at all. That thought creeps in uninvited when he's alone. And while his ego will never let him admit it out loud, there's a growing awareness that your silence isn't weak, it's strong, it's composed, it's not needy, it's not angry, it's clear. And that kind of silence is unsettling to someone who always thought he could control the emotional tone between you two. He may start romanticizing the past, not because he's deeply missing you yet, but because he misses the way you made him feel, the attention, the energy, the validation. And now he has to sit with himself. Without that mirror you used to hold up for him, he starts to question, even if subtly, what if she's actually done? What if she's really moved on? What if someone else is giving her the attention I didn't? These thoughts are uncomfortable, but they're necessary, and they only arise because you've stayed silent, not from bitterness, not from revenge, but from growth. You stopped performing. You stopped trying to prove your worth to someone who didn't recognize it while you were giving your all. And that silence, sustained over time, begins to dismantle his ego's illusion of certainty. The truth is, silence forces someone to confront the space they used to fill. And by day 3, he's starting to realize that space might not be his anymore. He's not reaching out yet because the ego won't allow it. But the ego is no longer calm. It's loud because it's insecure. It's defensive because it senses change. And that change, it's not in him, it's in you. You're no longer emotionally available just because he expects you to be. And when a man starts to feel that loss, even if he's not ready to admit it, something inside him shifts. Maybe not enough to act yet, but enough to feel the quiet discomfort of knowing he's no longer sure where he stands. That's the power of silence. And on day 3, it's only just begun.
By day 5, the silence is no longer something he can ignore. It's not a minor shift or a passing mood, it's a presence of absence that's growing heavier by the hour. The thoughts he pushed aside on day 1 are now circling with more intensity. His ego is still whispering, still trying to protect him, but a louder voice is starting to emerge, a quieter, more honest one. And that voice is beginning to ask, did I mess this up? What makes day 5 different is the discomfort. Not the dramatic kind that hits all at once. This is the slow, creeping discomfort that shows up when the patterns he relied on start to collapse. You're not reacting, not chasing, not even flinching. And the silence, which he once thought he could wait out, is becoming something he has to face. For the first time, he's realizing that this might not be a temporary retreat on your part. This could be a shift, a real one. And that thought unnerves him. He rereads your last texts, not just once, but multiple times. He goes over your words with a new kind of attention. He's looking for a sign, some hidden clue that might tell him if you were already pulling away when you last spoke. And maybe for the first time, he starts to recognize things you said that he didn't fully hear before. Warnings disguised as calm statements, disappointment hidden in politeness, distance showing up before the silence ever did. Now, with no new words from you to distract him, those old words begin to echo differently. He checks your social media more often now, not just to see if you're active, but to feel out your emotional temperature. Are you posting like nothing's wrong? Are you being intentionally quiet there too? Are you giving any sign that you miss him? Or are you just living, and if you are living, smiling, moving forward, that disturbs him more than he expected? Because the more at peace you seem, the more he starts to question his place in your world. The truth is, many men don't expect a woman to find peace without them, and when she does, that realization doesn't sit comfortably. The disbelief starts creeping in now. She can't really be done right. There's no way she's actually letting go. But he's not as confident as he sounds, even to himself. Doubt is forming cracks in the wall the ego built. And where there was once a certainty that you'd reach out, there's now a flicker of fear that you won't. That maybe this time you really have turned the page, and worse, that you're not looking back. He may try to rationalize your silence. Maybe she met someone else. Maybe she's just playing hard to get. But none of these stories feel solid anymore. The longer your silence stretches, the more he realizes it might not be about him anymore at all, and that possibility stings. Because it's one thing to lose your attention when you're still emotionally attached. It's another thing entirely to feel like someone no longer needs you at all. That's not just rejection, that's irrelevance. And for someone who once held your focus, that's a deeply unsettling feeling. His memory gets sharper now. He starts to recall the little things you did that he brushed off, the compliments, the support, the patience, the love you offered when he was too distracted or distant to appreciate it. And now, without your voice there to fill the silence, he starts to miss those things, not just in theory but tangibly. He remembers the warmth of your energy, the way you made him feel seen, and it dawns on him that he may not find that again easily. That maybe he had something rare and didn't treat it that way. Still, he doesn't necessarily reach out. Pride is powerful, but even pride is beginning to feel more like a costume he's wearing to hide the discomfort growing inside. He's not as at ease as he pretends to be, and the longer he waits, the more he starts to feel that time isn't on his side. What was once a simple silence is now beginning to feel like a decision, one that you made, not to punish, but to protect yourself. That's the real weight of your silence on day 5. It's not just what's missing, it's what it represents: maturity, boundaries, self-respect, your refusal to beg for crumbs when you deserved the whole meal. And for a man who once assumed your energy would always be there, this quiet is both foreign and humbling. What he's starting to realize, even if he won't admit it, is that you're not the same woman he knew a few days ago. You're stronger now, more centered, not because of him, but because of the space without him, and that, more than anything, is what makes this silence so hard to ignore. By day 7, the silence isn't just noticed, it's loud. It's undeniable. It's a wall he can't break through, not because you've locked him out, but because you've walked away quietly and chosen not to look back. A week might not seem long in the grand scheme of time, but when someone's absence is felt every day, every hour, every moment you used to be present, 7 days, can stretch like an emotional eternity. And on this day, something shifts inside him. The disbelief and denial begin to fade, and in their place arrives something heavier: realization. He doesn't want to admit it. His pride still wants to hold on to the narrative that you're just going through a phase. That maybe you're still upset, maybe you just need more time, but the deeper voice, the one he's tried to ignore, starts to speak louder now. And it says what he's been afraid to acknowledge all along. You might actually be done. It's not just the lack of texts or calls. It's not even the missing emojis or conversations that once filled his day. It's the emotional gap, the energy that used to surround him. Your kindness, your softness, your thoughtfulness is gone. You're no longer orbiting around him. You've returned to your own center, and that, more than anything, is what he begins to feel. By day 7, the silence becomes personal. He starts to take it not just as a mood shift, but as a statement. A message without words, one that tells him, "You no longer have access to me in the way you once did." And it stings, not because you've said anything cruel, in fact, you've said nothing at all, but that's what makes it even more powerful. You didn't lash out, you didn't beg for attention, you didn't create a scene, you simply chose yourself, and for a man used to being the center of someone else's emotional world, that calm withdrawal is more impactful than any confrontation ever could be. The realization that you're not playing a game, that this isn't about manipulation but maturity, lands with weight. He may replay arguments or moments where you expressed how you felt unseen, unheard, or unloved. He may suddenly start to get it, not because you're telling him anymore, but because the space left behind is teaching him more than your words ever could. He starts to see that your silence isn't revenge. It's clarity. You're no longer trying to teach him your value. You're embodying it. That realization breeds reflection. He thinks about how he showed up or didn't, about the times you needed more presence, more consistency, more reassurance, about the moments when he thought you'd always be there, no matter how little he gave in return. And now he's coming to terms with the fact that love, real love, doesn't stay where it's not respected. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, and for perhaps the first time, he begins to understand that love also leaves. He may begin to feel regret, not just because you're gone, but because of how he showed up when you were still there. He's beginning to realize that he had someone emotionally invested, emotionally open, someone who gave, and now that well is dry. Not because you've run out of love, but because you've run out of yourself to pour. That kind of realization doesn't come with fireworks or tears. It comes in quiet moments when he's alone with the consequences of his behavior. And here's the part that's hardest to accept. He knows that reaching out now might not change anything. He knows that a simple "Hey, I miss you" won't undo the silence you maintained with so much strength. He starts to realize that this situation requires more than a surface-level message. It would take effort, vulnerability, accountability, and for someone who coasted on your emotional investment for so long, that feels like a mountain he may not know how to climb. By day 7, he starts to understand that silence is not just about distance, it's about dignity. You're no longer offering your presence to someone who didn't value it. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're just done giving energy to someone who didn't know what to do with it. And that, more than anything else, is what breaks through his ego and hits his heart. He may not say it yet, he may not reach out, but something has undeniably shifted. He's no longer asking, "Why hasn't she messaged me?" He's asking, "What if she never does again?" And now he has to sit with that question. By day 10, the silence has matured into a presence of its own. It no longer feels like just a pause in the conversation, it feels like a closing chapter. And now, the thoughts that were once whispers in the back of his mind begin to speak louder and more urgently. He starts to ask himself a question he hoped he'd never need to answer. What if someone else is now giving her what I didn't? This fear doesn't arrive gently. It crashes in like a wave. Up until now, he's been struggling with the idea that you're detached, that you're unbothered, that you're healing, and that was already hard enough to accept. But the possibility that you've found peace and attention from someone else, that ignites something deeper. It's not just discomfort anymore. It's fear. Fear of being replaced is not always about love. Sometimes it's about ego. Sometimes it's about the realization that the emotional space he used to take up, sometimes lazily, sometimes carelessly, might now be filled by someone who sees your value in real time, someone who doesn't take 10 missed calls to respond, someone who doesn't need space to recognize your worth, someone who shows up when you need them, not when it's convenient. This fear cuts into his pride, because for the first time, it's not about whether you'll come back. It's about whether he still could, even if he wanted to, and the answer doesn't feel so certain anymore. That's when the mind starts to wander, not just through memories, but through hypothetical scenarios. Is she going out more? Who is she with? Is she smiling at someone else the way she used to smile at me? Is someone else holding her hand now, not because she's trying to move on fast, but because she's free? What unsettles him most isn't just the idea of your body next to someone else, it's the thought that your heart might be in safer hands, that someone else might already be doing what he didn't, saying what he never said, and listening to you the way he always should have. That's the kind of fear that doesn't fade quickly, because it's built on the truth he refused to see when he still had your time and presence. You see, most men don't think they'll be replaced, at least not meaningfully. They assume they're the standard, the unforgettable one. But by day 10, reality has a way of creeping in. Because silence doesn't just feel like disconnection, now it feels like detachment. And detachment looks a lot like someone who is no longer emotionally available to you, even if you come back. That realization is sharp. It hits harder than any argument, any blocked number, any angry message. Because it's not reactive, it's grounded, it's peaceful, and that is the most terrifying thing for someone who assumed they could always come back to you whenever they were ready. By now, he might be watching your online activity with an intensity he'd never admit. Not because he's jealous. Jealousy requires some level of confidence that you still belong to him in some way. No, this is something else. This is insecurity wrapped in silence. This is wondering if you ever think about him anymore at all. And even worse, wondering if someone else has already taken his place in your thoughts, your routines, your emotional life. He may want to reach out now, and he might. But what holds him back is the awareness that things have changed. That a message sent today won't land the way it would have 10 days ago. That he waited too long hoping you'd break the silence, and now he's no longer sure he even has the right words. The fear of being replaced grows from the realization that he was never owed your patience, and yet you gave it. He was never entitled to your softness, and yet you poured it out. And now that it's gone, he's starting to feel the difference between being missed and being necessary. You're not playing games. That's what truly shakes him. You're not trying to provoke jealousy. You're not breadcrumbing him with subtle signs or mixed signals. You've simply gone quiet. You've simply walked away. And when a woman does that with grace and finality, the silence becomes a mirror. He has to look into it and see who he was in your life and who he chose to be. And if he sees that the person you needed him to be was someone he refused to grow into, that reflection lingers. By day 10, the fear of replacement isn't just about another man. It's about being replaced in your life, in your heart, in your peace. And the worst part, it's not just fear. It's the dawning understanding that it's already happening, not because someone else came along, but because you did. You replaced him with your own strength. By day 14, something inside him shifts again, but this time it goes deeper. It's not confusion anymore. It's not irritation or ego. It's clarity. The fog has lifted. The noise of justifying, denying, or blaming has grown quiet, and what remains is a raw, honest recognition that he let something go that he should have held on to with everything he had. It's not just that he misses you now. It's that he sees you clearly, maybe for the first time. The silence that he once thought he could outlast now feels permanent. At first, it was a waiting game. Then it became a curiosity. Eventually, it turned into discomfort. But now it feels like a door he didn't even notice closing until it was already locked from the other side. He starts to realize that what he once took for granted wasn't guaranteed. Your attention, your affection, your presence, those weren't infinite resources. They were gifts, and now that they're gone, he finally understands what it meant to have them. He replays moments that didn't seem significant at the time. The way you supported him even when he didn't ask. The little check-ins, the way you remembered things he said even when he forgot, the emotional effort you put into holding space for both of you, these weren't just gestures, they were signs of depth, signs of someone who was all in. And now, in the stillness of your absence, those memories sting, because they weren't just sweet, they were sacred, and he didn't protect them. There's a kind of pain that comes not from what someone did to you, but from what you failed to do for someone else. That's the kind of pain he starts to feel now. It's not just heartbreak. It's the ache of missed opportunities, of words left unsaid, of love poorly handled. He's no longer mad that you're silent. He's not even surprised anymore. He's just hollow because he's come to the realization that your silence was the answer to every question he didn't take seriously when you were still trying. By now, he's no longer asking if you've moved on. He's wondering how he ever expected you not to. He begins to see that your peace wasn't a rejection, it was a decision, one you made for yourself, after too many times giving chances he thought would keep coming forever. He realizes he didn't lose you when you stopped talking. He lost you long before when you felt unheard, unvalued, unsupported, and still stayed longer than most people would have. 2 weeks without you isn't just an empty inbox or a quiet phone. It's a shift in his internal world. It's the awareness that your silence isn't something he can fix with a grand gesture or a dramatic message. He sees now that love doesn't collapse in one day, it erodes. Slowly, with every missed call, with every rolled eye, with every selfish decision, with every time he chose comfort over connection, and he realizes that he mistook your patience for permanence. The hardest part isn't just realizing you're gone. It's realizing you gave him every opportunity not to lose you, and he still did. He understands now that when you were still speaking, when you were still trying, you were offering chances. When you stopped, you weren't angry. You were done, and that's a kind of closure that leaves no room for argument. He can't debate silence, he can only sit with it. In his quiet moments, he may think about reaching out, but now, it's not just a fear of being ignored. It's a fear that he no longer has a place in your life, not because you're being cruel, but because you've grown, because you chose to evolve instead of wait, because you respected yourself enough to let go of what wouldn't grow with you. And somewhere deep down he knows, even if you did reply, you wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't shrink yourself to fit back into the space he gave you. You wouldn't lower your standard just because he finally decided to rise. The version of you who stayed and explained and tried, she's gone. The woman who now lives in her peace isn't angry. She's just unavailable to the version of him who didn't see her before. So he sits with the silence. And now it sounds different. It's not empty. It's full of all the things you no longer need to say, full of growth, full of strength, full of boundaries, and in that fullness he finally sees what he lost. It wasn't just you. It was the version of himself that could have loved you better but didn't.